Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to Target Prelims 2022. As you know, this is an absolutely free crash course that has been specially curated for your upcoming prelims. Over the last 4 days, we have had 4 sessions already. 2 of them were polity, 2 of them were for Indian economy. So today is the first session for international relations. We're going to have 2 more sessions at the end of the crash course, that is on the 20th and 21st of May. So I hope you're liking these sessions. I hope it is helping you in preparing for the upcoming prelims. We have many more interesting subjects lined up. We have places in news, reports and indices, environment and ecology, science and technology, etc. The purpose of the crash course is to help you prepare for current affairs of the last 1 year, to cover the important topics that will be relevant for your prelims, along with few topics from 2020, which could also come as a potential question in your UPSC prelims. So for the schedule for the crash course, just go below and download it from the description box so that you can stay in touch with the crash course schedule. So don't forget to watch these sessions live every day at 7:30 p.m. and do study current affairs with us and make your path towards prelims much more simpler. So if you're liking the initiative, don't forget to like the video, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So let's start with international relations, the first session, under which we are going to cover the important current affairs that were in news over the last 1 year, along with few topics from the previous year as well. So let's do this with the help of few questions. The first question: which of the given pairs are incorrectly matched? See, UPSC does prefer asking such match the following type questions. So the idea is to help you get accustomed to such questions which come from different formats. So here we have a list of islands on one side. They have been matched with the respective countries that they might be located in. So you need to check whether they have been correctly matched, and you need to answer which of them have been incorrectly matched. Right? So these places, these islands that are mentioned here, they were in news in international relations. First we have the Bhasanchar Island matched with Thailand over here. Agalega Islands matched with Mauritius, the Assumption Island matched with Maldives. So to answer this question, you need to know where these islands are exactly located, why these islands were in news. So let me provide a brief explanation for this. See, in this map you can see the Bhasanchar Island over here. It is actually located in Bangladesh. It has been in news in the context of the Rohingya crisis, the Rohingya refugee crisis that emanates from the Rakhine state of Myanmar that's located over here. The Rohingyas, they historically belong to the Chittagong and Cox's Bazar region of Bangladesh, and over the years they have migrated and they have settled in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. But you might have heard that Rohingyas have faced a lot of oppression and persecution in Myanmar in modern times. After Myanmar became independent, it rendered the Rohingyas stateless, took away their citizenship, and they have been constantly subjected to oppression, and there has been a lot of violence, communal violence, targeted ethnic violence against them. So this has triggered a refugee crisis in the region, and the Rohingyas have fled back to the Chittagong and Cox's Bazar region of today's Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has received a huge inflow of refugees in the last few years, and it has been trying to settle some of these refugees at this island known as the Bhasanchar Island that's located in the Bay of Bengal. So this island is located at the opening of the Meghna River. This is where the Meghna River drains into the Bay of Bengal, and right at the opening you have the Bhasanchar Island. So Bangladesh's plan to resettle the Rohingyas over here has been very controversial, because the Bhasanchar Island is a low-lying island and it is very vulnerable to several disasters. In fact, this island resurfaced very recently in 2006-2007 was when the Bhasanchar Island came up to the surface, and it's a very low-lying island that is vulnerable to cyclones and coastal flooding and other related disasters. So that's the reason why the plan of Bangladesh to resettle the Rohingya refugees over here has been controversial on humanitarian grounds. The United Nations and several international institutions, they have criticized Bangladesh for this plan to relocate Rohingyas at an island which is very vulnerable to natural disasters. So throughout the last 1.5 years, the Bhasanchar Island has been in news, and hence you should know the location. You have to be familiar with the location. And now, since we are talking about the Rakhine state of Myanmar, I would also like to introduce you to a very important port that is located over here. That is the Sitwell Port that you can see in the map. The Sitwell Port of Myanmar is also located in the Rakhine state, and it is a strategic port that has been developed by India. India has developed this strategic port as a part of an ambitious connectivity project with Myanmar. It's called the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Corridor. This is a connectivity project being pursued by India as a part of its Look East, Act East policy, and India is planning to connect with Myanmar through this transport corridor, and it also gives alternate access to the northeast of India. This project involves multiple modes of transportation, including a maritime link over here, connecting the Indian port of Kolkata with the strategic Sitwell Port of Myanmar. And here, there is an inland navigation corridor over the river Kaladan, based on which the project has been named. Then after this, there is a highway or a road link that connects with the Indian state of Mizoram. So this project involves multiple modes of transportation. Hence, it's known as the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Corridor. So since we were talking about the Rakhine state, I thought it is better for you to be familiar with this project and know that India has developed the strategic Sitwell Port, which is also located in the Rakhine state. Then coming to the other two islands which have been mentioned in the question, that is the Agalega and the Assumption Island. These two islands are located in the Indian Ocean. The Agalega Islands belong to Mauritius and the Assumption Island belong to Seychelles. Please make a note of this. Both the islands are strategically located and they have been in news over the last few years. So it can be very, very important for your prelims. The reason why these islands are in news is because India has won the lease to develop transport infrastructure over these islands. Back in 2015, Prime Minister Modi visited these countries. He paid a very important visit to Mauritius and Seychelles. That is when Prime Minister Modi announced the launch of India's Sagar Doctrine, which is a dedicated doctrine towards the Indian Ocean region. Sagar stands for Security and Growth for All in the region. So while launching this doctrine, the Prime Minister also inaugurated few important strategic projects on Mauritius and Seychelles. He inaugurated the Coastal Surveillance Radar project, which is an important maritime security project of India. India has built these coastal surveillance radars on Mauritius and Seychelles to enhance maritime security in the region. So after announcing the launch of Sagar Doctrine and after inaugurating the coastal surveillance radars, India signed a very important agreement with Mauritius and Seychelles, through which they leased these strategic islands to India. Mauritius leased the Agalega Islands that you can see over here in the map, and Seychelles leased the Assumption Island to India. The plan is to develop transport infrastructure, which includes a runway, a possible airport, and port facilities. Strategic experts believe that India could potentially turn these civilian projects into a military purpose. They could potentially become a military base for India, and of late, these projects have received a lot of opposition as well in Mauritius and Seychelles. That is why the islands are in news, and you should know which country it belongs to and where exactly it is located. So now, it must be very simple to answer the question. Bhasan Char is not located in Thailand. It is located in Bangladesh. Agalega has been correctly paired. It is located in Mauritius, whereas Assumption has been incorrectly matched. It's not in Maldives, it is in Seychelles. So the question is asking you to identify the incorrectly matched pair, which is 1 and 3. That is option C would be the right answer for this particular question, right? So let's move on to the second question. Which of the following statement correctly defines exercise Sea Breeze? Exercise Sea Breeze was in news last year, in June 2021 to be specific. So there are 4 options given here. We need to check as to which matches the description of exercise Sea Breeze. Is it a simulation in the Indian Ocean on rising sea levels organized by the UN Environment Program? Is it a multinational naval exercise in the Black Sea led by Ukraine and the United States? Is it a cultural outreach by India towards countries in the Bay of Bengal, or none of the above? So let's answer this question following a brief explanation on Exercise Sea Breeze. Exercise Sea Breeze is a multinational naval exercise that is held in the Black Sea. It is an initiative that was primarily started between United States and Ukraine. The US is the one which sponsors Exercise Sea Breeze, and the primary participant is Ukraine. The exercise is held in the Black Sea, and these exercises have been going on since 1997. They are held every year, and along with US and Ukraine, there are many other countries which participate in this exercise. Many NATO allies, such as UK, France, sometimes Germany, Turkey, so many European countries, as you can see in the map here, also take part in this exercise, and even other close allies and friends of US and Ukraine, right? Even they take part in this particular exercise. There have been editions where countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, Israel, and in the recent edition, even Pakistan took part in this exercise. So this exercise was one of the precursors to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has broken out this year. The stage for the Russia-Ukraine conflict was being laid since many years. Last year, this exercise, which was held in the Black Sea, actually increased tensions between Ukraine and Russia, because Russia wasn't very welcoming of the naval ships of these countries into the Black Sea. In this map, you can see that Black Sea is located strategically, and it's very vital for Russia. Russia is a dominant power in the region. Since the days of the Soviet Union, Russia has seen itself as a predominant naval power in the Black Sea, because the Black Sea is what guarantees access to the Mediterranean and further to the Atlantic for Russia. There are important straits located over here, the Turkish straits, such as the Dardanelles Straits, the Bosphorus Straits. These straits are controlled by Turkey. So that is the only access that Russia has towards the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. That is the reason why Russia always sees itself as a dominant naval power, maritime power in the Black Sea. So this was challenged in the recent years by Ukraine and the Western countries, primarily led by the US. Especially last year, they held a major exercise, and in this edition of Sea Breeze 2021, thousands of soldiers, along with advanced military equipment, participated in the exercise. Multiple naval ships, submarines, fighter jets, they all took part, and Russia saw this as a direct threat to its dominant position in the Black Sea. So this in fact began the series of events which led Russia to escalate the tensions with Ukraine and to mobilize troops against Ukraine. It's in this context that Exercise Sea Breeze becomes very important for your prelims. So please note that US is the one which organizes and sponsors this exercise. It includes Ukraine primarily, and in different editions, NATO allies are invited. Various European countries and other allies of US participate in this, and even countries like Pakistan, Japan, South Korea, they've all taken part in this particular naval exercise. The last point I would like to highlight is the littoral states of the Black Sea. This could also be potentially important for your prelims. Please make a note of the states that are sharing the Black Sea. This includes Turkey over here, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia. Right? So please make a note of these countries that open towards the Black Sea. That could also be a potential prelims question. Now, coming back to the question we were discussing, the answer would be option B. Exercise Sea Breeze is a multinational naval exercise in the Black Sea led by Ukraine and the United States. So this is an important topic. Please make a note of this and also remember the other related points that we have discussed. Now let's move on to the third question. The third question is related to something known as the Atlantic Charter. Okay, the question says, which of the following statements are correct? Atlantic Charter is a declaration signed by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and US President Franklin Roosevelt in August 1941. It set out the common goals for the world after the Second World War. The second statement says those goals included free trade, disarmament, and the right to self-determination of all people. The last statement says recently US and UK signed a new Atlantic Charter at the 2021 G7 summit in Cornwall. So to answer the question, you should know what is the Atlantic Charter, right? The Atlantic Charter was basically a key document that was signed by US and UK after the Second World War. During the World War period, US and UK were closely aligned together against the Axis powers, and they set out a chart, a path for the world, and this was codified in the Atlantic Charter. You can see the key provisions of the old Atlantic Charter over here. It essentially committed these countries to focus on the right to self-determination, which was being denied by many imperial powers and fascist powers like Germany, right? It recognized the right to self-determination of people of all countries. It highlighted the need for free trade in order to reduce trade barriers and promote global economic engagement. It also provided for recognizing the right to freedom, especially the freedom of seas, the freedom of navigation without any interruption or disruption. It also committed these countries towards the goal of disarmament in order to reduce the arms race and reduce tensions. So the Atlantic Charter in many ways laid down the path for the post-World War era. It was signed between US and UK, between their respective leaders, that is Churchill and Roosevelt. So clearly, the first statement that was given is correct. The second statement is also correct because these were the goals of the Atlantic Charter. Now, this topic is in news because last year, when the G7 summit was hosted by the United Kingdom at Cornwall, the leaders of US and UK, they renewed their commitments and they signed the new Atlantic Charter. That is why the topic is in news and it can be very important for your prelims. Under the new Atlantic Charter, US and UK have taken up new commitments. They have made fresh commitments to stabilize the world order, to promote the global economy, and also to deal with the pandemic. So that is why the new Atlantic Charter was in news. And the key provisions of the new Atlantic Charter is focused on promoting democracy and open societies in order to promote democratic and constitutional principles. It focuses on promoting the sovereignty and integrity of nations, to promote peaceful resolution of disputes. The idea is to prevent conflicts and unnecessary escalation of tensions between countries. It also focuses on cyber threats, nuclear deterrence, focusing on disarmament and international stability. It also prioritizes climate change and as well as provides focus for strengthening the global healthcare systems. It essentially proposes to tackle the pressing challenges of the day. That includes climate change, cybersecurity threats, pandemic, etc. So this is a renewed commitment of US and UK to chart out the future for the world, and they have agreed to work together in these areas by signing the new Atlantic Charter. It is a renewal and upgradation of the old Atlantic Charter. Okay? So now, coming back to the question, we can clearly say that all the three given statements are correct. The new Atlantic Charter was signed at the last year's G7 summit in Cornwall. The first two we have already discussed, both are correct. So option D is the right answer, 1, 2 and 3. Now, moving on to the next question, which of the following statements are correct? This question is related to a very, very important organization known as OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. This is another international institution which has been in news over the last 1 to 2 years, especially with regard to the war which is going on, the civil war in Syria. In Syria, there have been accusations that chemical weapons have been used by the Syrian government led by Bashar al-Assad. So OPCW has investigated these allegations. It submitted a report last year pointing out that possibly chemical weapons have been used in the conflict. I hope you know that the usage of chemical weapons in a conflict is prohibited under the Chemical Weapons Convention, right? So that's a context in which this question has been picked, this topic has been picked. The question says the OPCW is an intergovernmental organization and the implementing body for the Chemical Weapons Convention, which entered into force in 1997. India set up the National Authority for Chemical Weapons Convention, or NACWC, under the Chemical Weapons Convention Act of 2000 for implementing the provisions of the convention. The last statement says NACWC is an office under the Ministry of Defense. So let's see which of the given statements are correct. Let's evaluate the role, the functions of OPCW, and let's also talk about the Chemical Weapons Convention. See, this is one of the major arms reduction conventions that we have. It's on the lines of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the Biological Weapons Convention, etc. This entered into force in 1997, and the members who have signed and ratified the convention, they are bound to bring in a national law, a national legislation to enforce the provisions of this convention. This convention primarily prohibits the usage of chemical weapons. Please note down this point. It prohibits the usage of chemical weapons, and it proposes a plan to destroy the existing stockpiles of chemical weapons around the world. It makes the member countries to commit to destroy their stockpiles and stop the production of chemical weapons. The idea is to eliminate chemical weapons so that they never have to be used in conflict. Because chemical weapons cause enormous damage. They are considered to be inhumane, and as a result, they have been prohibited from being used in conflicts, and this convention lays down a path through which the existing stockpile can be identified and destroyed so that we can eliminate chemical weapons completely. So to implement the provisions, the countries, they will adopt a national law. India has done this by enacting the Chemical Weapons Convention Act. Is that clear? And India has also set up a national authority to ensure that India abides by the provisions of the convention. This office, it is under the Cabinet Secretariat, not under the Ministry of Defense. It is under the Cabinet Secretariat so that the Prime Minister can directly oversee the functioning of this office and India's fulfillment of its commitment towards the Chemical Weapons Convention. So the third statement is incorrect. It's not under the Defense Ministry, it is under the Cabinet Secretariat. Okay? This authority is headed by the Cabinet Secretary himself, and he will be assisted by other senior secretaries like the Defense Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, the Secretary to the Ministry of Fertilizers, right? Because India will have to eliminate the existing stockpiles and prevent the production of chemical weapons in India. That's the purpose. So this authority is vested with that responsibility, and it functions under the Cabinet Secretariat. The next point you have to make note is that India has successfully fulfilled its obligations to this convention. India has destroyed all the chemical weapon stockpiles, and it has proven this to the OPCW. So now you should know about the role of OPCW as well. See, this institution known as OPCW, it was set up through the Chemical Weapons Convention. The responsibility of OPCW is to enforce the provisions of the convention. It has the powers to carry out inspections, to carry out verification. It can send inspectors to other countries to check and verify whether they have abided by the commitments of the convention. So OPCW has done a phenomenal job over the years to ensure that the world is getting rid of chemical weapons. It's because of its role that it was recognized with the Nobel Peace Prize as well. The institution has been awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. So over the last 1 or 2 years, OPCW is frequently in news because in Syria and recently even in Ukraine, there have been allegations of usage of chemical weapons. So OPCW has sent its inspectors to verify these allegations. That is why the organization, the convention, can be very important. You should also know how India is abiding by the convention. So the third statement is incorrect, whereas the first two statements are correct. So option B is the right answer, 1 and 2 only. Now moving on to the next question, which of the following statements are correct? The 1951 UN Convention on Refugees was originally limited in scope to persons fleeing events occurring before 1st January 1951 and within Europe. The 1967 protocol removed the geographical and temporal boundaries of the convention and made it universally applicable. India has ratified both. So we need to check which of the given statements are correct. See, the 1951 UN Convention on Refugees, or just known as the Refugee Convention, has also been in news because of the Rohingya crisis, because of the refugee crisis in Europe, right? Because from Africa, from Middle East, a lot of refugees have flown into Europe, triggering a refugee crisis in several European countries. Then we have a refugee situation in Afghanistan and in the nearby Central Asian countries, and now in Ukraine and in the neighboring countries, we are again witnessing a refugee situation. So this brings us to the Refugee Convention. That's why it has been in news. It's a very trending topic, right? So you should know about the key provisions of the convention and what is India's commitment to this convention. The 1951 Refugee Convention is also known as the Geneva Convention of 1951. It was brought out in the backdrop of the Second World War, because the Second World War created a number of refugees in Europe, and to deal with them on humanitarian grounds, the convention was brought out, and when it was introduced, it was specific to Europe. It was specific to European refugees alone. Please note down this point. And also, it was specific for a certain time period. It would apply only for those events which had occurred before 1st January 1951. So basically, there was a geographical and temporal boundary, right? So Refugee Convention of 1951 applied only for Europe and European refugees and refugees created out of events occurring before 1st January 1951. Later, the Refugee Convention has been expanded in its scope through the 1967 Protocol. The 1967 Protocol expanded the geographical and temporal limitations, and it has made the Refugee Convention universal. Today it applies for every country, refugees from any country, without any time limit or any time period. So clearly the first two statements given were correct. Now, has India joined and ratified these conventions? That's the question. The statement says India has ratified both, but this is an incorrect statement because India has neither signed the Refugee Convention nor the 1967 Protocol to it. Is that clear? Because India has several issues with the convention. See, first and foremost, India has a rich history of accepting refugees even without being a part of the convention. We have taken in Tibetan refugees, Bengali refugees, Afghan refugees, Sri Lankan refugees, right? So India doesn't need a UN law, that too which is set in the World War context, to be applied for India today. Plus, India is not convinced by the provisions of the convention. Like I said, initially it was designed to deal with European refugees in the European context. Later it has been expanded. So India feels that it doesn't address all the unique situations that might be specific to the South Asian context. And as you know, South Asia is very volatile, right? We might witness multiple refugee situations. So we don't want to take binding international commitments, because once you're part of it, it becomes a binding international commitment. So India doesn't want to open up to any international scrutiny unnecessarily. So when needed, India has stood up on humanitarian grounds and it has taken in refugees on its own. So due to all these reasons, India has decided not to sign up to the Refugee Convention and to the 1967 Protocol. So the third statement becomes incorrect. So what's the answer? Option B, 1 and 2 only. Both the statements, the first two statements, are absolutely correct. Next, moving on. Which of the following rivers flow between India and Bangladesh? Such questions on India's neighbors can definitely be expected, especially on transboundary rivers, because India does have many water sharing disputes with its neighbors, right? We have it with Pakistan, we have it with China, Nepal, and with Bangladesh as well. With regard to Bangladesh, it's very important to know a little about the transboundary rivers that we have. So there are three options given here. So you need to check whether they are transboundary rivers between India and Bangladesh. We have Teesta, Feni, and Barak. Okay? So let's see what's the correct answer. But before that, let's have a small discussion on the topic. See, this is a very, very important topic because there are 54 transboundary rivers between India and Bangladesh. We share 54 rivers. There are 54 rivers that originate in India and flow down into Bangladesh. So sharing the waters can always be controversial, right? Because water is a very emotive subject, and any projects that India plans, it will trigger a controversy in Bangladesh. Why? Because India is an upper riparian state. We are located in the upstream, whereas Bangladesh is a lower riparian state. So as a result, we have plenty of water sharing disputes, and you should know the major rivers that cut across from India to Bangladesh. First, we have the Ganga River and the Ganga River system that flows in from West Bengal over here, and it becomes the Padma River system in Bangladesh. Okay, that's point number one. Next, we have the Brahmaputra that flows down from Arunachal Pradesh and Assam after originating in Tibet. In Tibet or in China, it is known as Yarlung Tsangpo. It flows down into Assam and Arunachal and then enters Bangladesh, where it is known as the Jamuna River. Right? Next, we have the Teesta, a very important river, very much in news. The Teesta River originates over here in Sikkim, in the Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve. Right? It takes birth at a glacier known as the Zemu Glacier and flows down from Sikkim into West Bengal and then enters Bangladesh. This river has been very contentious. It's been a major source of dispute between India and Bangladesh, and actually both the countries should have resolved this by signing a water sharing agreement. Bangladesh is ready for a settlement, but India has not been able to fulfill this promise that was made to Bangladesh. India has not been able to work out and sign a Teesta water sharing agreement because of the politicization of the issue in West Bengal, right? So that is why it is frequently in news. Whenever the Indian side and the Bangladeshi side interact, whenever the two leaders meet or travel, right? They always bring up this question, especially from Bangladesh. There is a demand that India has to fulfill this commitment to sign the Teesta water sharing treaty. So that is a pending issue again. And we also have unresolved disputes over Ganga and Brahmaputra. With regard to the Ganga, there is a barrage known as the Farakka barrage in West Bengal. India, Bangladesh are yet to work out the dispute they have over the utilization of the Farakka barrage. Then apart from this, we have the Barak and the Feni River. These are rivers that flow from the northeast of India. The Barak River is a major river in the northeast. It flows through Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Assam, and then crosses over into Bangladesh. Over the Barak, at this location, India is planning to build a dam known as the Tipai Mukh Dam. It's a proposed dam on the Barak River on the Indian side. But Bangladesh has opposed this project because Bangladesh is worried that the Tipai Mukh Dam, if it is built, it might affect the flow of the river into Bangladesh. So that is why the Barak River is in news, the Tipai Mukh project is in news. Then finally, we have the Feni River that flows down from Tripura into Bangladesh. The Feni is also an important river in the northeast. It provides drinking water and it meets the industrial needs of a commercial center in Tripura known as Sabroom. Sabroom is an important industrial town located on the India-Bangladesh border. But the way in which India utilizes the waters of Feni creates a controversy in Bangladesh. Because Bangladesh is a lower riparian state, it keeps demanding that it should get a fair share. It is concerned that Indian projects in the upstream might affect the flow of the waters in the downstream. So all these are unresolved disputes between India and Bangladesh, right? So that is the reason why you should know about these important rivers. You should also know that we have connectivity projects between India and Bangladesh to connect our waterway networks. You might have heard about the National Waterways of India, right? India has built inland navigation systems on the Ganga River, the Brahmaputra, the Barak. So we are working on connecting these national waterways of India with the inland navigation systems of Bangladesh so that we will have alternate access to reach the northeast of India, right? So these are the various reasons why these rivers between India and Bangladesh are in news, and you can expect a question on any of these topics. So now coming back to the question, it's very simple and straightforward now that all the three rivers are transboundary rivers between India and Bangladesh. So option D is the correct answer, 1, 2 and 3. Now before I take up the next question, there might be a number of students who would have joined in a little late. So let me just tell you that please like the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and do watch these sessions live every day at 7:30, and we'll be running this crash course, this free crash course till the 21st of May. You have many more interesting subjects lined up. We'll be covering the important current affairs for your prelims, not just of the last 1 year, but also from 2020. So do support us by liking the video and don't forget to subscribe. The next question, which of the following was or were an outcome of the 2021 G7 summit? Was it the B3W initiative, Build Back Better World, Democracy's 11, or the Carbis Bay Declaration? Which of these initiatives were brought out or launched or announced at the G7 summit that was held last year? See, last year, the G7 summit was hosted by the United Kingdom at a place known as Cornwall. Following the summit, many important initiatives were announced. So first you should know what is the G7. The G7 refers to the greater 7 countries. It's a grouping which was formed in mid-1970s following the global oil and economic crisis. It brings together the industrialized and the developed countries of the world to stabilize the global economy. Slowly, its membership has expanded over the years. It became the G8 as well, which included Russia back then. But after Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, Russia was boycotted. It was thrown out of the group. So since 2014, the G8 became the G7 again. So today, the members of G7 include industrialized and developed countries, primarily the Western countries like Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States. These countries meet frequently, almost every year, to discuss the global economic situation, and today they even cover strategic issues, and they also cover many political issues as well. So when the G7 summit was held last year, India was invited along with few other countries as a special observer. India was invited to the summit to take part and observe the proceedings, because many of these countries, they're also part of a larger grouping called the G20, right? So since India has emerged as a major player, a major geopolitical and economic player, India was also invited with few other countries to participate at last year's G7. So that is why the G7 is important, and more importantly, during this summit, many important initiatives were launched. All the three were announced during the Cornwall summit: the Build Back Better World initiative, Democracy's 11, and Carbis Bay Declaration, right? So the correct answer is option D, 1, 2, and 3. Next, you should also know what these initiatives are all about. There could be a question on Build Back Better World, or B3W. This is an initiative that is primarily championed by the United States, by the US. Through this, the US and the G7 members are looking to fund infrastructure projects around the world in order to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. See, previously the US had launched a similar initiative known as the Blue Dot Network. The Blue Dot Network involved US, Japan, and Australia. These countries had come together to finance and fund key infrastructure projects in other countries in order to expand their influence. Based on the idea of Blue Dot Network, at the G7, the US has proposed a much more ambitious initiative known as B3W, or Build Back Better World, through which the G7 countries are going to sponsor infrastructure projects in other countries similar to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The idea, the purpose is to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. So that's about B3W. Next, we have Democracies 11. This is an initiative that was announced at the Cornwall G7 summit. It proposes to bring together the 11 top democracies of the world in order to protect democratic states against autocratic states. The idea is to promote constitutional democracies and democratic rights, basic rights, which include free speech, free press, etc. This initiative, known as Democracies 11, it primarily aligns all the democratic nations against authoritarian countries like China and Russia. So G7 is placing a lot of hope on this initiative, and India is also a part of Democracies 11. You of course have the G7 countries which are part of Democracies 11. Apart from that, you also have India, then there is Australia as well, South Korea. So the major democracies of the world, they are part of this initiative known as Democracies 11. The last one is the Carbis Bay Declaration. This declaration was brought out at the G7 summit to specifically deal with health crisis and health situations or challenges that are facing the world. This is based on the experience of the world in dealing with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, the response of the world has been falling short with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. So these countries came together at the G7 last year to launch a specific health initiative to promote the healthcare systems around the world under the Carbis Bay Declaration. So all the three were announced at the G7 summit. So the correct answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Now let's take up the next question. The 2021 edition of Exercise Cutlass Express involved which countries? Does it involve US, Australia and New Zealand, or East African countries, US, UK and India, or India, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Mauritius, or India, Thailand, Vietnam and Singapore? Which countries take part in this exercise, in this military exercise known as Exercise Cutlass Express? To answer the question, we will need a brief explanation about this topic. It's a very important topic because it focuses on a key part of the Indian Ocean. This exercise, which has been mentioned in the question, right? It focuses on the western part of the Indian Ocean region. This is a multinational naval exercise involving some East African countries over here, around 12 East African countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Djibouti, and you can see some island countries over here like Mauritius, Seychelles, Comoros, Madagascar, French Reunion or La Reunion. So these island nations along with few East African countries, they take part in this multinational naval exercise along with US, UK, and this time India was also invited and India also took part in this exercise. Now that is why the topic is very important. Because see, of late India has been projecting its influence across the Indian Ocean under the Sagar Doctrine, which we discussed earlier. And under the Sagar Doctrine, the western part of the Indian Ocean is particularly important for India. Even for our exams, the region is very important because recently, that's in 2020, India was admitted as an observer to an important regional grouping known as the Indian Ocean Commission. The Indian Ocean Commission or IOC is a regional organization that is focused on the western part of the Indian Ocean region. This grouping involves some of the important island countries of the region, and these are the member countries. The members of Indian Ocean Commission include Seychelles, Comoros, Madagascar, Mauritius and the French Reunion. These 5 island countries located next to East Africa in the western part of Indian Ocean, they are the members of the Indian Ocean Commission. So in 2020, India was admitted as one of the observer states into this important grouping. The other observers of Indian Ocean Commission include China, Japan, European Union, United Nations, Malta, and the Organization of Francophonie countries, where the French language is still spoken, especially in former French colonies. These are the observer states: India, China, Japan, European Union, United Nations, Malta, and the Organization of Francophonie countries. The members are very, very important: Seychelles, Mauritius, Madagascar, Comoros, and French Reunion. India has very close relations with all of them. We already discussed the strategic ties we have with Seychelles and Mauritius. This is the overseas territory of France, that is French Reunion. India, France have very close working strategic and defense relationship. We also have very close defense relations with Madagascar, right? So of late, India has been giving a lot of focus to East Africa, the western part of Indian Ocean, and there is an important channel over here called the Mozambique Channel. The Mozambique Channel that lies between Mozambique and Madagascar. It's an important shipping lane. It's a sea lane of communication. So on this critical part of the Indian Ocean, India has given a lot of focus in the recent past, and that is why the topic itself is very important. So recently there have been many big developments happening here for India. First, we became an observer to the Indian Ocean Commission, and last year we were invited to take part in the biggest naval exercise of the region, right? This exercise is organized by US, UK, and many international institutions along with 12 East African countries. Is that clear? International organizations like the IMO, International Maritime Organization, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the European Union, Interpol, they all take part in this important naval exercise. So that is why the topic is very, very important for your prelims. It's a very factual topic, but the points can be very important. So the right answer is option B. East African countries, US, UK, and India. They are the ones who took part in exercise Cutlass Express that was held last year. Okay. Now moving on, we'll talk about another question from Africa. The Africa region was pretty much in news last year as well. The question says, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has been opposed by which countries? Which countries have opposed the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam? This project has been in news. It has attracted a lot of controversy as well. So first you should know what is this project all about and which countries are opposing it. Let me explain this with the help of a map. A map will help you to understand where this dam is coming up, on which river, which countries are affected by it. See, Ethiopia is an African country located over here, and it is planning a very, very ambitious project. It's said to be one of the world's biggest dam project called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project. This project is coming up on the Blue Nile, which is one of the tributaries of the Nile River. Is that clear? The project is coming up on the Blue Nile. See, some important facts about the Nile River is that it's one of the longest rivers, right? And it is critical for many African countries here. It is joined by the White Nile, which is the other tributary that joins the Blue Nile at Khartoum over here, which is the capital of Sudan. The White Nile, which is one of the tributaries, it has its origin over here at Lake Victoria, which is one of the African Great Lakes. It is part of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda over here. It's one of the African Great Lakes, which is formed by the Great African Rift Valley system. So the White Nile takes its birth over here, passes through South Sudan, reaches Sudan over here, and merges with the Blue Nile that is coming from Ethiopia. So then we have the Nile River that passes through Egypt and finally drains into the Mediterranean Sea at the port city of Alexandria. So the Nile River is the lifeline of these countries, of all the countries that you can see here, right? Even Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, even they depend on it directly or indirectly. So this mega project that Ethiopia has proposed on the Blue Nile, it threatens to disrupt and affect the flow of water into the downstream countries, that is Sudan and Egypt. Understood? The Nile is flowing towards the north. It's a north flowing river, right? It's flowing from here towards the Mediterranean. So if Ethiopia builds this mega dam over here, there are concerns that it might affect the flow in Sudan and in Egypt, because the flow of Blue Nile might be affected. So that is why Egypt and Sudan are the ones which are opposing this mega dam project of Ethiopia. So what's the correct answer? The correct answer is Egypt and Sudan. Option D is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. India has recently formed a trilateral initiative with which of the following countries to cooperate in the Indo-Pacific? Last year, India announced the launch of a trilateral initiative with few countries, and this was with Japan and Italy. It's not with US and UK, it's not with UK and Australia, but last year we announced a new trilateral initiative focused on maritime security with Japan and Italy. So option B, 2 only, is the correct answer. See, talking about trilateral initiatives, India actually has many trilateral initiatives which are specifically focused on the Indo-Pacific region. The Indo-Pacific is strategically important for India. It is the most happening region in global geopolitics, right? And there is a direct competition here and a face-off between US and China, the two predominant global powers. So in the Indo-Pacific, India is trying to carve out a space for itself, and it is trying to uphold international rules-based order. So to counter the aggression of China and to stabilize the Indo-Pacific, India is aligning with like-minded countries, and recently it has formed few trilateral initiatives. One such initiative was with Japan and Italy that was formed last year. We have formed a similar trilateral initiative with Australia and Indonesia as well. India, Australia and Indonesia have also formed a trilateral to focus on maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. Then the previous year, that's in 2020, India, France and Australia also had formed a maritime trilateral initiative. They had formed this in 2020. Last year they met as well. They discussed the key security issues. But later, in the later part of last year, France quit this trilateral initiative because France was unhappy with a new initiative of Australia known as the AUKUS. AUKUS is a trilateral initiative of Australia, UK and US, right? Last year, AUKUS initiative grabbed global headlines because under this initiative, US and UK promised to provide nuclear submarine technology to Australia. It was seen as a landmark security initiative to focus on the Indo-Pacific and to counter China. So when AUKUS was announced and when US and UK promised to provide nuclear submarine technology to Australia, Australia cancelled a key submarine project with France because Australia had already contracted a French submarine. So when overnight, when Australia cancelled the project, France was angry, it was upset with Australia, US and UK. So as a mark of protest, it quit many initiatives where it involved Australia, US and UK, and one such initiative that France quit was the India, France, Australia trilateral. But apart from that, we have the India, Japan, Italy trilateral formed last year itself in 2021. The question is asking about that. And we also have another trilateral between India, Australia and Indonesia. So for the given question, the right answer is option B, 2 only. Next question. Which country was the latest to be admitted to the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Is it Belarus, Iran, Mongolia or Afghanistan? Which is the correct answer? First, you should know about the SCO. It's a very, very important regional grouping. It's frequently in news. It's very important to India as well. So there are chances, very high chances that UPSC could ask questions on the SCO. Recently, there has been a big development with regard to SCO. A new member has been added. So let's understand a few basic points about the SCO and which is this country which has recently joined the grouping. The SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it's an important political, economic and security grouping that is primarily focused on Central Asia. That is the primary focus of SCO, the Central Asia region. This initiative was formed by 5 countries: China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia and Tajikistan. These 5 countries started the initiative back in 1996 and it was known as the Shanghai Five. This is the origin of SCO. China and Russia, the two major powers which have influence in Central Asia, they came together with few Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. These 5 Central Asian countries, they formed this grouping called the Shanghai Five in 1996. Later, it was expanded by including Uzbekistan and it became known as the Shanghai Pact, right? Shanghai Pact included these 6 countries and it was the most influential group of the Central Asia region. Recently, the group was expanded with the addition of new members, that is India and Pakistan. Until recently, India, Pakistan were just observers to the SCO, but they were admitted as full-time members in 2017 at the Astana Summit, which was held in Kazakhstan. At the Astana Summit of 2017, India, Pakistan were formally admitted into this group and now India, Pakistan also have joined the SCO. Last year, another country has been added to the group, which is Iran. Iran was also an observer state, but now it has become a full-time member because last year SCO has admitted Iran as a full-time member. Understood? So now it is a grouping of 9 countries and the focus is mainly on the Central Asia region and the region around it. Apart from these members, the grouping has many important observer states as well. The other countries given in the options here, Belarus, Mongolia and Afghanistan, they are all observer states of SCO. They all hold the observer status, Belarus, Mongolia and Afghanistan. Iran was also an observer, but it has become a member, it has been admitted as a new member. So the correct answer for the given question is option B, right? Then the last point about SCO, you should know that the grouping also has few dialogue partners. Apart from full-time members and observers, it also has few dialogue partners such as Sri Lanka, then Cambodia, even Turkey, right? So these are some of the dialogue partners of SCO, okay? So please remember the members, the observers and at least some of the dialogue partners. Under this grouping, there is an important platform known as RATS, R-A-T-S. It stands for Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure. It is a counter-terrorism platform that is available at the SCO. The members collaborate at the RATS platform to tackle terrorism which is very prominent in and around Central Asia, especially around Afghanistan and Pakistan. So the RATS platform is it's a very important platform of the SCO because it is focused on counter-terrorism. Okay, so these are the key facts that you should know about this important grouping, and it can definitely be a prelims question. Next, moving on, we'll talk about a defense platform that India has recently procured. India is procuring the MH-60 Romeo multi-role helicopters from which country? Last year, India inducted the state-of-the-art advanced multi-role helicopter known as the MH-60 Romeo. So the question is, India got this from which country? See, the MH-60 Romeo is also known as the Seahawk helicopters. It was designed by Sikorsky, an American defense manufacturer. Now Sikorsky has been bought over by Lockheed Martin. So today the helicopters are produced by Lockheed Martin, but initially it was designed and developed by another defense manufacturer known as Sikorsky. These are American companies. These are US based defense manufacturers. So India has procured this helicopter from the United States. Now what is so special about this helicopter? The name itself suggests it's a multi-role helicopter. It can be used for multiple reasons, multiple purposes. It can be used for search and rescue operations. It can be used for transporting men and equipment in the battlefield. But more importantly, these helicopters are known for their anti-submarine warfare capabilities. This is what makes this helicopter so critical for the Indian Armed Forces. It is being specifically procured for the Indian Navy. Okay, you can see an image over here as well. Last year, 2 helicopters were handed over to the Indian Navy by Lockheed Martin. 2 have already been inducted and many more will be very soon sent to India. The contract involves around 24 MH-60 Romeo helicopters. 2 of them have already been delivered. Many more will be delivered in this procurement deal, and it will strengthen the anti-submarine warfare capabilities of the Indian Navy. Now, this is important because India is looking out for such resources, such platforms, which will help it to counter the submarine capabilities of China. China is known to push its submarine fleets into the Indian Ocean. The Chinese submarines pose a threat, a credible threat to Indian security and interests in the region. So India is looking to boost its anti-submarine warfare capabilities. A few years before this, we had procured the P-8I Poseidon, which is an aircraft. The P-8I Poseidon aircraft, which is also a specialist aircraft for anti-submarine warfare. It has already been inducted into the Indian Navy, and P-8I Poseidon is also used for maritime reconnaissance and surveillance. But the primary capability is anti-submarine warfare. So to further add strength to the capabilities of the Navy to target the Chinese submarines, India is procuring the MH-60R Romeo helicopters. So this deal was very much in news. It's a government-to-government deal between India and US, and Lockheed Martin is fulfilling the deal. Is that clear? So this helicopter is very much capable of detecting submarines that remain hidden. It can track them down, mount surveillance on them, and even fire missiles and torpedoes to bring down these submarines. That is the reason why this platform is very, very important. So the right answer is option C, the United States. Right? Now, next question. The World Health Organization or WHO GMP certification applies for the exports of which commodity or which product? WHO GMP certification. This was in news last year. Does it apply for the exports of agricultural commodities or pharma products or hazardous chemicals or animal husbandry products? To answer the question, you should know what is GMP certification of WHO. You should know the basic concept. Without that, you won't be able to answer this question. This topic was in news for several reasons, right? Mainly because of the pandemic, the widespread export of several drugs, pharma products and vaccines that was taking place, and many international institutions, they were procuring vaccines and drugs from other countries. So in this context, this topic of certification of pharma products and their exports was in news. So clearly the answer is option B. It applies for pharmaceutical products. Last year, India also tried to procure the certification for few Ayurvedic products as well, right? So that is the reason why this particular topic, the GMP certification of WHO, was in news. So you should know a little more about this to be able to answer such questions. GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. Okay? This is a quality standardization protocol that has been introduced by the WHO. It specifically applies for medical products, for pharma products, to ensure that the medicines and drugs that are produced and exported, they are meeting the quality standards that have been prescribed. This certification is mandatory for exporting drugs and pharma products to other countries. Understood? The draft of this certification protocol was adopted in 1968 by the WHO, and in 1969 it was adopted by the World Health Assembly. Since then, more than 100 countries have adopted this certification through their national laws, and they will have their respective drug certifying authorities who will be issuing this certification. Without this certification, you cannot export pharma products and drugs. this certification is mandatory. Is that clear? In the case of India, it is implemented by the Drug Controller General of India. The Drug Controller General of India provides for this certification, which allows for Indian pharma products to be exported to other countries. The certificate is issued by the Drug Controller General based on the inspections that are carried out by the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. Understood? So, based on this WHO protocol, a certificate is issued known as the Certificate of Pharmaceutical Product. This is the certificate issued under the GMP certification protocol laid down by the WHO. Last year, it was very much in news because many countries were exporting and importing pharma products. Many institutions were procuring vaccines from other countries, and this is a mandatory requirement for all such economic activities. You cannot export drugs, vaccines and other pharma products without this mandatory certification. Is that clear? The certification is issued by the respective countries and their authorities, but they have to follow the protocol and standards that have been laid down by WHO. So the answer for the question is option B. It applies for pharmaceutical products. Now moving on to the next question, consider the following statements. The Pancheshwar multi-purpose project is a proposed dam project between India and Nepal. It will come up across the Mahakali River, where it forms an international boundary between the two countries. The project has run into trouble as a result of the border dispute between the two countries at a place known as Susta. So to check whether these statements are correct, you need a little background on the India-Nepal relations and some recent developments in the India-Nepal relationship. I'm sure you would have heard about the border dispute between India and Nepal. India and Nepal have two minor border disputes at places such as Kala Pani and Susta. These are the places where India and Nepal have a boundary dispute. These disputes, they trace their origin to the Treaty of Sugauli, which was signed in the 1800s between British India and the then Kingdom of Nepal. Due to haphazard partition carried out by the British, there was a colonial legacy that was left behind on the India-Nepal border after these two countries became independent. But Kalapani-Susta dispute was always a minor dispute, but recently the issue has been escalated by Nepal, and Nepal has strongly claimed the regions, and that resulted in a diplomatic issue between India and Nepal, right? So in this map over here, you can see the Kalapani region, the triangular region over here. It's located near the Lipu Lake Pass, that's at the tri-junction of India, Nepal and China. The Lipu Lake Pass is strategically very important. It has a lot of cultural significance as well. Since ancient times, it has been a trading route between India and Tibet. Culturally, it is very important because it's an access route for reaching Mount Kailash, which is part of the Kailash Manas Sarovar Yatra. And strategically, it's very important because India, China both maintain troops, and they even have a border meeting point at the Lipu Lake Pass. This region you see here, the Kalapani, it includes the Lipu Lake Pass. It also includes another important pass over here, the Limpi-Adura Pass. This whole region belongs to India. India has administered this region since independence as part of the Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand. But Nepal has a counterclaim. It has been claiming this region, but it was always a minor dispute. This dispute arises because in the Treaty of Sugauli, while drawing the boundary between British India and Nepal, a river was used as a reference. The river was the Mahakali River. You can see that in the map as well. The Mahakali River has been used as a reference for the boundary, but post-independence, India and Nepal have a different perception of the tributary of Mahakali, which has been used as a reference. So as a result, India and Nepal have different perceptions about the boundary line, and Nepal also has claims in the region, but India has administered the Kalapani region as part of Uttarakhand, as part of the Pithoragarh district. Recently, Nepal had escalated the issue. It had resulted in a lot of tensions between the two countries. And we also have one more border dispute in Bihar at a place known as Susta that you can see in the map here. Here as well, the British had used a river for reference, the Gandak River or the Saptagandaki or the Narayani river. So due to the changing course of the river, the boundary is not very clear at this place known as Susta, which is located on the Nepal-Bihar border. So both India and Nepal have conflicting claims here as well, and this is also a minor dispute. Now coming to the project which is in question, the Pancheshwar multi-purpose project. You can see in the map that this project known as the Pancheshwar multi-purpose dam project, it is definitely located along the India-Nepal border over here, and it is coming up on the Mahakali river. It is proposed to be built on the Mahakali. This is all set to become one of India's biggest dam structures. It is a joint project between India and Nepal because the Kali river flows through the India-Nepal boundary line. It is located very close to it. So along the boundary is where this multi-purpose project has been planned. This project was proposed many decades ago, almost close to 30 years back. The project has been delayed for several reasons, due to environmental concerns, due to local opposition, due to lack of funds, etc. Recently, the project was all set to take off, but again it was disrupted because of the boundary dispute which escalated, that is the Kala Pani dispute, not the Susta dispute, right? So these are some important facts that you have to be familiar with. The Pancheshwar multi-purpose project, it will generate massive amounts of hydropower which will be shared between the two countries. It will also provide for drinking water and irrigation needs of India and Nepal, right? It will also help in controlling the flood waters and thus prevent disasters as well. So now equipped with this knowledge, we can easily answer this question. The first statement is definitely correct. It is a proposed multi-purpose project between India and Nepal. Second statement is also correct. It's coming up across the Mahakali river where it forms the international boundary. But the third statement is incorrect. Why? Because here the dispute is not the Susta dispute. Susta dispute is towards the Bihar border. The dispute here is the Kala Pani dispute. So third statement is incorrect. So you have to identify the correct statement, which is 1 and 2 only. That is option B is your right answer. Now the next question. Which of the following statements are correct regarding UNSC presidency? The body's presidency rotates monthly amongst its members. The body's presidency is fixed for a 5-year period. The P5 countries elect a country from the 15 members for a 3-year term. Non-permanent members cannot hold UNSC presidency. Now to answer the question, you should know what is UNSC, what is its mandate, what is its structure, composition, etc. But first, why is this topic important? The topic is important because currently India is a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. India is holding a 2-year term from 2021 to 2022. Last year in the month of August, India held the presidency of the UNSC. India held the presidency of the UN Security Council. Many important resolutions were adopted under India's leadership. So that is why the topic becomes very important. You should know what is UNSC, who are the non-permanent and permanent members, how are they elected, what is the composition, and what's the mandate, and who can become the president, or which country can occupy the presidency of this important body of the United Nations. So let's cover this quickly, which will help us answer the question. See, UNSC is one of the principal organs of the United Nations. There are 6 principal organs like the UN General Assembly, International Court of Justice, Economic Social Council, etc. So UNSC is one of the principal organs of the UN. Its mandate is to ensure international peace and security, to decide upon the admission of new UN members to the United Nations, especially to the General Assembly, and to approve any changes or amendments to the UN Charter, which is like the Constitution of the United Nations. This clearly shows that the UNSC is a very powerful institution. Compared to every other organ of the UN, the UNSC is the most powerful because it has the powers to maintain international peace and security, meaning it can authorize peacekeeping operations. It can provide for imposition of economic sanctions against other countries. It can even authorize the use of force and military action against other countries. So this makes UNSC very powerful. It also has the powers to amend the UN Charter and admit new members. So UN reforms will not happen without the approval of the UNSC. That is why this body is so powerful and so important. This is the only authority or body of the UN whose directions are binding on all the other UN member states. If UNSC passes a resolution, right, it becomes binding on all the other member states of the United Nations. That is what makes UNSC so powerful and important. Now coming to its composition, there are 15 countries which are part of it, 15 members. 5 of them are permanent members, the P5, and 10 of them are non-permanent members. The P5 includes China, France, Russia, United Kingdom and the United States. These are the 5 permanent members of the UNSC and they have the veto power. They have the power to cast a veto which will help in blocking any resolution. One veto by one member can block an entire resolution. So this is what makes the P5 countries very powerful at the United Nations because they exercise the veto power. Then you have the 10 non-permanent members who are elected to the Security Council based on a geographical quota. They are elected for a 2-year term based on a regional representation basis. For different regions, there are different number of seats and the members of UNGA, they vote and elect the members of the non-permanent members of UN Security Council and they get to occupy a 2-year period. Right? The term is for a 2-year period. So India won such an election from the Asia Pacific region and currently India is holding the non-permanent seat from 2021 to 2022. Now coming to the last important point, who gets to hold the position of presidency of UNSC? The presidency of UNSC rotates every month between all the 15 members in an alphabetical order. All the 15 members get to hold the presidency position. It rotates on a monthly basis from one country to another and this is done on an alphabetical order. Right? The 15 countries are arranged in alphabetical order and every country will occupy the presidency for 1 month. Right? And this keeps rotating. So this being the case, we can look at the options and clearly say that option A is the right answer. Right? The question is asking which of the statements are correct regarding UN presidency. The body's presidency rotates monthly amongst its members. The other 3 statements are absurd. They are incorrect. So option A is the right answer. Now before I start with the next question, let me again remind you to like the video and without fail subscribe to the channel, right? Because there might be many new viewers who would have joined in late. So don't forget to hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel. Now let's quickly look at the next question. The term Unite Aware, recently seen in news, refers to what? An initiative of United Nations to promote cultural and racial sensitivity, a technology platform developed by India to enhance the safety of UN peacekeepers, a maritime surveillance tool developed by the Quad countries or Quad members, or WHO's pandemic surveillance tool to prevent future breakouts. So what is Unite Aware? What does it deal with? So by looking at this, you at least get an idea that it is related to some international institution, an initiative of an international institution. So let's understand more about Unite Aware. Unite Aware is related to UN peacekeeping forces. It is basically a technology platform. It's a mobile-based platform that has been developed by India. Now that is why the topic is very, very important for your prelims. India has spent around $1.64 million on this project. India has developed a mobile platform, a technology platform to help the UN peacekeepers in conflict zones. Is that clear? It will provide for better understanding of the terrain of the region where the peacekeepers are deployed. It will provide for better situational awareness by providing surveillance data, by providing valuable real-time intelligence. so that the peacekeeping forces can take adequate precautions to protect themselves in a conflict zone. Now, why is India doing this? India is doing this because India is a major troop contributing country to the UN peacekeeping forces. Most years, India is one of the largest troop contributing countries. Right? Thousands of Indian soldiers are deployed abroad in conflict zones where they are taking part in UN peacekeeping operations. So, to ensure the safety of the peacekeepers, they need real-time threat assessment. They should understand the terrain where they are deployed in. They should understand the real-time threats they are dealing with. So, India has developed a mobile platform which will collate all the required information and intelligence and pass it on to the peacekeepers who are deployed. Right? It will bring in live video feeds from the nearby cameras, satellite imagery, other early warning alerts based on threats and threat assessment and intelligence. It will all be collated and the real-time data and information will be passed on to the peacekeepers so that they can take adequate precautions. This platform was launched last year. It has already been implemented in some of the conflict zones like in Somalia, in Mali, right? In these conflict zones, UN peacekeeping missions are going on. Indian soldiers are also part of it. So India has gifted this tool, this technology platform to UN peacekeeping forces to ensure the safety and security of the UN peacekeeping soldiers, right? This is what you should know about Unite Aware. So clearly, the correct answer is option B. It's a technology platform developed by India to enhance the safety of UN peacekeepers. Moving on to the next question, we'll look at the Indian Ocean region again, because the Indian Ocean is strategically very vital for India. It is frequently in news as well. So let's know more about the Indian Ocean and let's identify any potential topics here which can be important for your prelims. Which are the founding members of the Colombo Security Conclave? Is it India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Mauritius or Seychelles? Please pay attention. The question is asking you to identify the founding members, not just the members of Colombo Security Conclave. See, the Colombo Security Conclave was in news recently. It was in news just few weeks back. It was in news last year as well. Let me give you some background here. Let me explain which are the founding members, what's the importance of the group, so that you will be able to answer any question that might come from this topic. In the year 2011, India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, they formed a trilateral maritime security initiative. Is that clear? In 2011, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, they came together and formed a trilateral maritime security initiative. The idea of these countries was to focus on maritime security issues of the region, right? So for this purpose, the three countries came together and India became the lead country of this initiative, because the Indian Navy has the capabilities to help out small countries like Sri Lanka and Maldives. This initiative later came to be known as the Colombo Security Conclave. And recently, they have added a new member. A new member has joined the group, which is Mauritius. For many years, India wanted to bring Mauritius on board because Mauritius is strategically located in the Indian Ocean. So Mauritius has recently joined this initiative, that is the Colombo Security Conclave. During the recent summit, the national security advisors of these countries met to discuss important maritime security issues such as counter-terrorism, piracy, disaster management and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. All such critical security issues of Indian Ocean were discussed by the national security advisors of these four countries. Mauritius was added as a new member to the conclave and Bangladesh and Seychelles were invited as observers. Bangladesh and Seychelles were invited as observers to the Colombo Security Conclave, right? There is a proposal to include Bangladesh and Seychelles as members as well. So these are some basic facts that you should be familiar with about the security grouping that is focused on the Indian Ocean. It is led by India. India is a founding member along with Sri Lanka and Maldives. Correct? Today there are 4 members, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Mauritius. But Mauritius is not a founding member. It has joined recently. The founding members are India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, 1, 2 and 3. So that would be option B. Option B is the correct answer for this question. Now moving on to the next question. The Reciprocal Exchange of Logistics Agreement or RELOS has been proposed between which group of countries? RELOS or Reciprocal Exchange of Logistics Agreement. First let me give you the answer, then we'll talk about RELOS. The correct answer is option C. It has been proposed between India and Russia. It's a long-awaited agreement that provides for exchange of logistics between the Indian Armed Forces and the Russian Armed Forces. This topic was in news because India-Russia came very close to signing this agreement, but at the last minute, they have postponed the signing of this agreement. This is said to be an important agreement to bring the Indian forces and Russian forces together, to get them closer and to improve interoperability between the forces. Now see, India signs these logistic exchange agreements with many friendly countries. The purpose of this agreement is to provide for exchange of logistics. That is to exchange your operational logistics such as refueling, resupply support, servicing and maintenance, etc. Such an agreement will basically allow the armed forces of one country to access the military facilities of another country. For example, if India-Russia sign the agreement, Indian armed forces like the Indian Navy, the Air Force or even the Indian Army, if they are deployed somewhere where Russia has a military base, then Russia would be bound to provide logistical support to the Indian forces. That is to provide for refueling and resupplies and to provide for servicing, maintenance, basing operations, etc. Similarly, India will have to extend the same logistical support. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. If Russian forces need any servicing or any refueling logistical support, especially in the Indian Ocean, India would be bound to allow Russian forces to access Indian military facilities. That is what the agreement provides for. It's a logistics exchange agreement. India has already signed such logistics exchange agreements with United States known as LEMOVA, the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement. We have signed a similar agreement with Japan known as Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement. We have signed a similar agreement with Australia, India-Australia Mutual Logistics Support Agreement. We have also signed similar agreements with France, with Singapore and also with South Korea. We are in the process of negotiating a similar agreement with the United Kingdom and Vietnam as well. Right? Such agreements will basically enhance the operational reach of the Indian Armed Forces. It will bring better operational closeness between India and these friendly countries. So we are pursuing a similar agreement with Russia as well, known as RELOS, and this is particularly important for India to access the Arctic region and the Russian Far East region. Because see, India has a lot of ambition to reach out to the polar waters, to the North Pole region. In the Arctic, the ice caps are melting, shipping is opening up, and there are plenty of resources to exploit. There is intense geopolitical competition that has already started in the Arctic. So India also wants to play a key role in the Arctic, right? We want to play an economic role in the Arctic region to exploit the economic resources. We want to have a strategic influence in the Arctic to compete with other powers like China, US and the others. And we also want to take forward our scientific experiments and research projects in the Arctic. I am sure you would know that India has research stations at the South Pole, at the Antarctic. We had a research station at the Arctic as well. India would like to progress on this front as well. So for all those operations and missions in the Arctic, India will need better logistical support somewhere in the close by areas. And this could come from Russia, especially from the Russian Far East region. The Russian Far East is located over here. The region also known as the Siberia region. the Siberia region, located close to the Arctic, can provide India that kind of access. Because India is heavily invested in the Russian Far East. India has invested a lot of money in exploiting the resources of the Russian Far East. Indian companies are already operating in the Siberia region. You might have heard about a gas field project known as Sakhalin Gas Reserve. It's a Russian gas field where India's ONGC has invested. ONGC Videsh Limited. Right? The Sakhalin Gas Reserve is located in the Russian Far East region. Of late, India is giving a lot of attention and focus to Russian Far East as a part of India's Act Far East policy. It is an extension of our Act East policy through which we are giving more attention towards East Asia, towards the Russian Far East, so that we can get better access to the Arctic region as well. So there is an economic and strategic motivation behind this. In fact, India participates in a Russian summit which is organized to bring investments into the Russian Far East region. Right? Russia has this summit called the Eastern Economic Summit, and India is a participant. India has recently announced a line of credit of $1 billion to bring more investments into the Russian Far East. Right? So we are looking to access this region. We are looking to bring this region closer to India so that the Indian forces, the Indian Navy in particular, has logistical support to reach out into the Arctic if required. India is also pursuing an important maritime link, a sea link with Russia between Chennai and Vladivostok, located over here. It's part of India's vision and Russia's vision to bring the two countries closer, because the traditional sea route that connects India with Russia from this side, from the West European side, through the Mediterranean Sea, it's a very long route. It's a circuitous route. It's time consuming, it's expensive. So India and Russia are looking to create a shorter alternative route towards the east by building a better link, a maritime link between Chennai and Vladivostok, which is a major port and a naval base for the Russian forces. So if India has better logistical access over here, it will help India project power towards the Pacific, towards East Asia, and as well as towards the Arctic. That is why this logistics exchange agreement is so important. That's why I have spent some time on this to explain all the key facets about this topic. Right? So it's a proposed agreement. It is yet to be signed. It has been put off at the last minute, but still it can be a potential topic for prelims. So the right answer is option C, India and Russia. Now, moving on to the next question. Which of the following statements are incorrect? Please pay attention to these questions. It's asking you to identify the incorrect statements. The Abraham Accords involves Israel, UAE, Bahrain, and the United States. Through this, UAE and Bahrain agreed to establish full diplomatic ties with Israel. UAE became the first Arab country to formally normalize its relationship with Israel. So the question is related to something known as the Abraham Accords. See, the Abraham Accords, they were signed in the year 2020. It was signed between Israel, UAE, and the United States. It primarily involved these three countries, and this provided for formalization of ties between UAE and Israel. Through this accord, UAE agreed to recognize Israel and establish diplomatic ties with Israel. This is a very big development in the West Asia region, because generally Arab countries over here in West Asia and even in North Africa, they haven't recognized Israel and they don't have official ties with Israel because of the Israel-Palestine issue. All the Arab countries here, the Muslim nations, they extend their support to the Palestinian cause. So on these ideological grounds, Israel was not recognized by most of the countries, and Israel did not have diplomatic ties with most of the countries. But in 2020, US President Donald Trump, he mediated a settlement between UAE and Israel and pushed UAE to recognize Israel and establish diplomatic ties with Israel. This was done through the signing of the Abraham Accords in 2020. Then after this, Bahrain signed on to the same agreement So even Bahrain is part of it. Bahrain also signed the Abraham Accords and provided for the normalization of ties between Israel and Bahrain. Is that clear? Following this, few other countries like Sudan, then Morocco, the African countries, Sudan and Morocco, they also signed separate agreements. They are not part of the Abraham Accord itself, but based on that, they have signed separate agreements with Israel to recognize the country and to establish diplomatic ties with Israel. But however, this does not make UAE the first Arab country to recognize Israel and establish ties with Israel. Because many years before this, two countries have already done that. The first one is Egypt. The first country, the first Arab nation to recognize Israel and establish ties with Israel was Egypt in 1979, when the Camp David Accords were negotiated. This agreement provided for a peaceful settlement between Israel and Egypt over their conflict. Right until then, Egypt was fighting a war with Israel. It had even fought the 6-day war in 1967 by joining other Arab countries in support of Palestine. But Israel lost the war and Egypt, please take a correction here. Egypt lost the 6-day war, the 1967 war, and Israel occupied Egypt's territory. The Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Desert that you see over here was occupied by Israel. So this pushed Egypt to negotiate and settle. Again, the US mediated between the two countries. It mediated between Israel and Egypt and worked out the Camp David Accords. Through this, Egypt became the first country to recognize Israel and establish official ties with Israel. Right? So it's not UAE. Then after Egypt, Jordan became the second country in 1994 to recognize Israel and establish ties with Israel. Is that clear? So first was Egypt, second is Jordan, and third is UAE. The United Arab Emirates became the third Arab country to recognize Israel through the Abraham Accords. Bahrain is also part of the Abraham Accord. Right? Bahrain became the fourth country. And this has been followed by similar agreements with Sudan and Morocco. So this gives greater recognition for Israel and brings more support to it, and it reduces the support on the Palestinian side. So this is a big geopolitical development in West Asia. It also has an impact on India's equation with these countries, especially on India's position on the Israel-Palestine conflict. So coming back to the question, we can say that the first statement is correct. Abraham Accord involves these four countries, Israel, UAE, US and Bahrain. Through this accord, UAE and Bahrain recognized Israel and established ties with Israel. So both the statements are correct, first and second. But third statement is incorrect. UAE was not the first to establish ties, it was Egypt and then Jordan, and third was UAE. So third statement is incorrect. But the question is asking you to identify the incorrect statement. So what's the answer? Option C, 3 only is the correct answer. Now moving on, let's take up another match the following type question. Which of the following given pairs are correctly matched? On the left, we have a list of Indian evacuation missions, and on the right, we have a list of countries from where they might have been carried out. We have Operation Devi Shakti matched with Ukraine, Operation Ganga matched with Afghanistan, Operation Rahat matched with Yemen. First, let's talk about Operation Ganga, the most recent evacuation mission of India. Operation Ganga was carried out this year, just a few months back in 2022, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm sure you would have read in newspapers that close to 20,000 Indians were stuck in Ukraine. Most of them were students, medical students. So after the conflict broke out, India had to bring them back. It had to evacuate them from the neighboring countries located over here, which is Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and Romania. From these neighboring countries, India brought back the Indian nationals through a mission known as Operation Ganga. So Operation Ganga is related to Ukraine. Next, we have Operation Devi Shakti, another recent evacuation mission of India. Operation Devi Shakti was carried out last year by India from Afghanistan. Last year there was a major development in Afghanistan, right? The Taliban took over, it captured power in the country again, and following this, a refugee crisis was triggered. Many Indians and friendly foreign nationals were stuck, and many started moving to other countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. So India had to rescue its nationals along with its diplomats from Afghanistan, and for this it carried out an evacuation mission known as Operation Devi Shakti. So this is related to Afghanistan. The last one given in the question is Operation Rahat. Operation Rahat was carried out by India in 2015 from Yemen when the country descended into a civil war. Around 5,000 Indians were stuck in this West Asian country known as Yemen, right? And India ran a special exercise, Operation Rahat, which involved both maritime assets and aerial assets, right? The Indian Navy was closely involved in the operation, and all the Indians had to be rescued and brought back to India. India even rescued many foreign nationals during Operation Rahat, right? So India has gained a lot of expertise in such emergency evacuations, right? In the last 20-30 years, India has carried out many such major evacuation missions, and the question is related to that because just in the last 1 year, India has carried out 2 major evacuations. Operation Devi Shakti from Afghanistan, Operation Ganga from Ukraine. So clearly you can say that the first 2 are incorrectly matched. They have been interchanged. The third one has been correctly matched. Operation Rahat has been correctly matched with Yemen. So the question is asking which are correctly matched. So what's the answer? Option C, 3 only is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. The term Northern Alliance was recently seen in news in the context of developments in which country? Is it with regard to Syria or Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan? First, let me provide the answer and then I'll explain what is the Northern Alliance. Why is this topic important for prelims? Northern Alliance is related to Afghanistan. It's related to the recent developments that happened in the country. Last year in August, the Taliban captured power again. It was clearly one of the biggest geopolitical developments. So there are many areas from which UPSC can pick questions for your prelims, right? One topic is the Northern Alliance. Northern Alliance is basically a coalition of various northern tribes in the northern part of Afghanistan, especially in a place known as the Panjshir Valley. In this map, you can see a location known as Panjshir. It's located to the north of Kabul and it is part of the Hindu Kush range. The Panjshir Valley is known for its natural defenses. It is considered to be very difficult to capture for an invading force. From many centuries, Panjshir Valley has been a stronghold because of its natural defenses. In this region, you have several northern tribes, especially the Tajiks and a few other Central Asian tribes like Uzbeks and the others. And they have all come together under a coalition known as the Northern Alliance. This coalition of tribes, known as the Northern Alliance that operates out of Panjshir Valley, they had resisted the Taliban, which is dominated by the Pashtuns, the majority ethnic group of Afghanistan, back in 1996 when the Taliban captured power for the first time. The Taliban had similarly captured power in 1996 and had formed the Afghan government until 2001. So during this conflict, during the Afghan civil war of 1990s, when Taliban was trying to capture power and when it formed the government later, right, it was resisted by one northern coalition force known as the Northern Alliance. It operated out of the Panjshir Valley over here, and these northern tribes like Tajiks, Uzbeks and the others, they are in minority. They are the minority ethnic group, and they have a history of rivalry with the majority ethnic group of Afghanistan, who are the Pashtuns. Pashtuns are found in the southern and eastern and western parts of Afghanistan. Pashtuns are the ones who largely comprise the Taliban. right? So there is a history of rivalry between the Pashtuns and the Tajiks. So when Taliban was looking to rise to power and capture power in the country, they were resisted by this coalition of tribes known as the Northern Alliance. This coalition was led by a legendary leader known as Ahmad Shah Massoud. You can see him in this image over here. During this first resistance, back in 1990s, the Northern Alliance was supported by India, Russia and Iran. It is said that India, Russia and Iran, they gave covert support or covert backing to the Northern Alliance to resist the Taliban, because Taliban was against the interests of India, Russia and Iran, right? Now recently the topic is back in news because when Taliban tried to capture power last year, it again faced resistance in the Panjshir Valley from a new version of the Northern Alliance. This was referred to as Northern Alliance 2.0, the second edition of Northern Alliance. This time it was led by Ahmad Shah Massoud's son, along with other legendary politicians of Afghanistan like Amrullah Saleh, the former leader of Afghanistan. So that is why Northern Alliance was in news, because recently there was a resistance from Panjshir Valley against the capture of power by Taliban. And India has a history of supporting the Northern Alliance. So you should know about the Panjshir Valley, where it is located approximately, and you should know what is the Northern Alliance. Just the basic facts, and it is more than sufficient for your prelims. So coming back to the question, the answer is option D, Afghanistan. Let's look at the next question. India took part in the Al-Muhadd Al-Hind 2021 naval exercise with which country? See, military exercises can be very important for your prelims, but there are plenty of military exercises that involve India. But here, I'm trying to carefully pick and select the most important ones. For example, we spoke about exercise Catalyst Express. We spoke about exercise Sea Breeze. These are exercises which were unique, which stood out, and they were very important from a geopolitical point of view, right? So we have to carefully pick out some important military exercises that can be asked as a prelims question. Of late, India's relations with West Asian countries has really improved. With West Asian countries, our strategic and defense relations have started improving. So our defense relations, defense exercises with these countries can be very important for prelims. Last year, one such military exercise was held called Al-Muhadd Al-Hind. So with which country did India hold this exercise? That is the question. The correct answer is option D, Saudi Arabia. Now, what is so special about this exercise? This was the first time that India, Saudi Arabia were holding such a naval exercise. That is what makes it important. See, Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Sunni world in West Asia, a key partner for India in West Asia, right? A key supplier of energy. India's energy security is very dependent on Saudi Arabia. It is home to millions of Indians. Indian diaspora reside in Saudi Arabia in large numbers. And with regard to counter-terrorism, security and defense in the region, Saudi Arabia is a key partner for India. Ever since we signed the Riyadh Declaration of 2010, since then, India's relations with Saudi Arabia, especially strategic and defense relations, they have been really improving. And last year, the first ever naval exercise was held between them, which is Al-Muhadd Al-Hind naval exercise. Okay? So that is why the topic was important. Now, let me show you the other important military exercise of India with the West Asian countries. I have provided the list over here. Please go through them. Remember the names. It is listing out the important military exercises of India with some of these West Asian countries. We already know about the exercise with Saudi Arabia. Next, with UAE, United Arab Emirates, we have Zayed Talwar, a naval exercise, Desert Eagle, an exercise between the two air forces. Then Oman is a key partner, right? Oman is a strategic partner in the Arabian region, the Gulf of Oman region. So with Oman, we have major exercises. There's an army exercise called Al-Naga, Nasim Al-Bahar with the Navy, and exercise Eastern Bridge between the two air forces. Then finally with Qatar. Qatar is also a major geopolitical player, right? Qatar was the one which mediated the peace process between US and Taliban. So Qatar has become a geopolitical heavyweight, and with such an important country, India has a military exercise, Zair al-Bahr, which is a naval exercise. So remember the names and with which country we are having these exercises. There could be a potential question here, right? Why is this topic important? It is important because our strategic and defense ties with West Asia have really improved in the recent years, right? We are having very expansive defense relations with them, so there could be a potential question on this. Now moving to the next topic, which of the following statements are correct? The Colombo Declaration was adopted in 2016 by 18 littoral states of the Indian Ocean region to make the region a drug-free zone. Second statement says the UN Office on Drugs and Crime is a party to it. Third statement says UN Office on Drugs and Crime runs this program called Maritime Crime Program, the Global Maritime Crime Program, to assist the states in the Indian Ocean to enhance and coordinate their efforts to combat maritime crime. See, the question is related to maritime crime in the Indian Ocean. So you should have a general idea about maritime crime in the Indian Ocean. You should know a little bit about the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. And more importantly, you should know about this declaration called the Colombo Declaration. Let me explain this with the help of a map. Let me also explain why is this topic important. See, this map you're seeing over here, it has been provided by the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. The mandate of this office is to fight drug trafficking. And drug trafficking is a type of organized crime. It's an illicit activity that threatens global financial stability, and it is also a security threat. It's a national security threat for many countries because drug trafficking is closely linked with terrorism and insurgency as well. It is also closely linked with money laundering. So that's the reason why this institution and its mandate to tackle organized crime such as drug trafficking becomes very important. So according to the map shared by this institution, there are many countries which are used for transporting and trafficking and smuggling drugs, right? Those countries have been listed over here. In South America, Latin America, there are many drug cartels that operate, right? In Colombia, in Mexico, these are the major drug production and drug smuggling hubs. And in and around them, there are other countries like Guatemala, Bahamas, Panama, Peru, and Bolivia and the others, which are used as transit points, which are used for smuggling and trafficking. Similarly, in the Indian Ocean region, India has emerged as a major hub, as a transit point for drugs. This is according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. India and the Indian Ocean, they have become a major transit point for drugs and drug smuggling. The reason is India is surrounded by two regions known as the Golden Crescent over here. The Golden Crescent region. It includes Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran. The region involving these three countries is known as the Golden Crescent. It is one of the major hubs of drug production and drug smuggling. So this region is located right next to the western borders of India. Similarly, to the eastern borders of India, there is a similar region called the Golden Triangle that includes Myanmar, Laos and Thailand. So to the west we have Golden Crescent, including Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran. To the east we have Golden Triangle, including Myanmar, Laos and Thailand. So India is sandwiched between two major hubs of drug production and drug trafficking. So India and the Indian Ocean naturally become a transit point for drugs and drug smugglers who are trafficking and peddling drugs. They largely prefer a route called the southern route. Excuse me. Drug smugglers from Golden Crescent and even Golden Triangle, they prefer the southern route that stretches from India and Maldives and Sri Lanka all the way towards East Africa. So this entire stretch has become a transit point for drug peddlers, drug smugglers and traffickers. So to tackle this menace, These countries have been brought together under Colombo Declaration of 2016. 18 littoral countries, the rim countries of this region, they have come together under Colombo Declaration, which has been facilitated by the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. It mainly focuses on the southern route. It creates a southern route partnership amongst these countries so that they can jointly tackle the threat of drug trafficking in the region. Right? Now, this is a very, very important topic because the threat for India from drug trafficking has gone up. Like I said, it is linked with money laundering and terrorism. That is why the topic is important. So, by understanding these basic concepts, we can easily answer the question. The Colombo Declaration was adopted in 2016. The UN ODC is involved and it provides assistance to the member countries through its Maritime Crime Program, or also known as Global Maritime Crime Program. This is a program of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime to assist the member countries of Colombo Declaration to fight maritime crime such as drug trafficking, piracy, smuggling, etc. So all three statements are correct and option D is your right answer. Now moving to the next topic, we are going to talk about the 5 Eyes. The 5 Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprising of which countries? There are 4 options given over here. So you should be in a position to answer which are the 5 Eyes countries. This topic has been in news over the last 1 year because of the increasing geopolitical rivalry between Western countries and China and Russia, especially between US and China and US and Russia. In this context, this intelligence coalition known as 5 Eyes has been in news and you should know which countries are part of it. See, the 5 Eyes initiative, it actually traces back its origin to the Atlantic Charter that we discussed earlier. Remember, I told you that under the Atlantic Charter, US and UK worked out a path towards the future to stabilize the world, to focus on disarmament, security, etc. As a continuation of that process, US and UK created a joint intelligence alliance, especially for electronic intelligence and to intercept communications. This was later expanded to include Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and this became the 5 Eyes Alliance. Today, these countries have developed tremendous intelligence gathering capabilities. They can intercept the entire internet traffic of the world. They can read every message, every mail, every encrypted communication almost. So it's a global intelligence alliance between these countries and they mainly focus on their immediate rivals like US, like China, like Russia, terrorist outfits, etc. So this alliance was in news over the last 1 year because of these geopolitical tensions. So you should know which 5 countries are part of the 5 Eyes Alliance. This alliance is informally expanded into 9 Eyes and 14 Eyes as well. It brings together other like-minded countries such as Denmark, France, Netherlands, Norway. They have also informally joined and assisted the 5 Eyes by sharing intelligence with each other. Okay? So this is informally known as the 9 Eyes Alliance. Then there is also the 14 Eyes Alliance that includes the 9 countries plus Germany, Belgium, Italy, Sweden, Spain, sometimes even Israel, Japan, Singapore and South Korea. Right? All these are like-minded countries which align with US and the Western countries. So they often come together to share intelligence with each other, especially electronic and communication intelligence. So 5 Eyes is a formal alliance between these 5 countries. It's an intelligence alliance. It has been expanded informally to form the 9 Eyes and 14 Eyes. And there are others like Israel, Japan and Singapore and South Korea who also contribute intelligence to these countries. Okay? So the correct answer for the given question would be option A. Right? US, UK, Australia, Canada and New Zealand. Now let's see if we can discuss maybe one last question or maybe 2 more. The Asia Reassurance Initiative Act or ARIA or ARIA of the United States provides for sanctions against China and North Korea for violating human rights, increased American engagement in the Indo-Pacific, including arms sales for allies, US naval deployment near conflict zones of Asia, or none of the above. This topic was in news over the last 2 years because under the ARIA Act, the US has been promoting its influence in the Indo-Pacific. So you should know some basic facts about this. Asia Reassurance Initiative Act. What is this act all about? How is it relevant for India? This act was introduced by the US in 2018 by then President Donald Trump. It's an old legislation. You might ask, why is this relevant today? It is relevant because the US is still acting upon the provisions of the act. This act provides for long-term investment of US, strategic investment of the US in the Indo-Pacific. The purpose of the act is to enhance the strategic presence of US in the Indo-Pacific. It provides for the US to invest in the region, deploy its military in the region, provide military supplies to its allies if needed in order to protect American interests. So in short, it is an act that is promoting American influence in the Indo-Pacific against China. Now that is why it is relevant for India as well, because India stands to benefit from this as it can seek a long-term alliance with the US in countering China in the Indo-Pacific. Right? Under the act, the US is looking at long-term engagement of the Indo-Pacific, and it is looking to even sell military assets. It is looking to sell military hardware to its allies in order to achieve American interests and protect American interests. So countering China and countering Chinese aggression is definitely part of the American interests. So countries like India in the Asia region, in the Indo-Pacific, can benefit out of this. So that is why the act is important and relevant even today, and the correct answer is option B. Okay, the last question for today, and we'll close the session after this. Aramco, seen frequently in news, is a non-state cyber organization carrying out attacks on behalf of Russia, one of the world's largest oil and gas company owned by the Saudi government, a hypersonic missile tested by China, or none of the above. So what is Aramco, which is frequently seen in news? See, Aramco is the world's largest oil and gas company. It is in fact one of the largest companies in the world in terms of revenue as well. Is that clear? This company is owned by the Saudi royal family, by the Saudi government. It's a government-owned entity, and Aramco is frequently in news for many reasons. One reason is Aramco has tried investing in India. It is a key supplier of energy to India. It has tried striking deals with India's Reliance and other companies to invest in the petrochemical sector and industry of India, right? So that is one reason why Aramco has been in news. Second, global oil markets have seen a lot of disruption because of COVID-19, because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So Saudi Arabia plays a key role in controlling oil supplies, and Aramco is frequently in news because it is the world's largest producer of oil and gas. It's one of the largest companies in this sector, and it has the ability to have a global impact. Then more importantly, the oil facilities of Aramco in Saudi Arabia have been repeatedly attacked in the last 1 to 2 years by the Houthi rebels of Yemen. Remember when we spoke about Operation Rahat, right? We spoke about a civil war in Yemen that started in 2014-2015. This civil war was triggered by a rebel group, by a terrorist outfit called the Houthis, the Houthi rebels. They have intense rivalry with Saudi Arabia, and of late they are using drones, armed drones, to carry out terror attacks against the oil pipelines and refineries of Aramco, which has caused quite a significant damage to the oil facilities of Saudi Arabia, and they have even recently attacked Abu Dhabi and Dubai, where an Indian national was also killed. So it's a very big development. There are stakes for India as well in this, and Aramco has been in news because of these developments. So you should know about this company as well, because UPSC has a tendency to ask about major institutions, organizations in prelims. With this, I would like to close today's session. I hope it was a fruitful and productive session. We'll resume the discussion. We have 2 more sessions to go for international relations, which will be held on the 20th and 21st of May. So please stay tuned to the crash course. Watch it every day, 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. For the schedule, you can download it from the description box. We have many more sessions coming up. We still have few sessions of polity and economy. Tomorrow, day after, we have exciting sessions on places in news. One is dedicated for art and culture. Then we have sessions on environment, science and tech, government schemes, etc. Our purpose here is to help you crack prelims and to make this crash course, this free crash course, a one-stop solution which will help you crack the examination. So I hope you're liking the initiative. So do follow the channel, subscribe to it, like the videos, share your comments, because once the session ends now you can start sharing your comments. We'll go through them personally. So thank you so much. Thank you for being with me. Have a great night.